Hi, my name is Rory Canterbury. I'm your host today on Arch Talk 101. And we have Jason on the line with us, and we're going to see what's going on in his world in archery, brought into it by his dad, which we talked to um, last week, I think it was, or a couple weeks ago. We talked to
It was
your
on
dad, Dave.
Wednesday.
Wednesday, yeah. Wednesday. We're recording this just a few days after the other one, but, when they come out once a week, it spreads them out. So welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
How about if you introduce yourself and tell us a little something about you?
My name's Jason Engelsman, uh, 30 years old. I'm a carpenter here in Kansas, and I love to shoot archery, love to hunt.
So, how did you get started?
My dad got me started in archery when I was just a young kid. I mean, as far back as I can remember, I had some form of a bow. My first bow was a Bear Brave, and man, he got me some arrows and started shooting with him in the yard. And I did go to a couple of 3D shoots more as a spectator when I was younger than anything. I don't remember competing in anything. But one I grew up in Colorado. You had to be 12 to hunt big game. And I started trying to hunt elk when I was able to pull back a bow and get to go with my dad on elk hunting trips.
I bet that was pretty nice to be able to go on a milk trips with your dad. And if I remember right, your dad you said that his dad was an archer. Do I
Yep.
remember that right? Yeah.
Yep. My grandpa shot archery back in the day. I don't know to what extent he shared more of that with my dad than me.
Yeah. And probably by the time go along, they're not quite as active as you are, and then being 30 years old, you've got a few years behind you.
Yep.
Um, so have you done a lot of 3D shoots, Dan, or?
Yes, sir. I shoot in the semi-pro class for ASA. Um, I go to as many of them as I can. The local shoots, the national shoots. I really enjoy it. It's kind of taken up all of my pastime.
It does, doesn't it?
Mm, Yeah, if when I'm not shooting, I'm usually at work, and if I'm not at work, I'm working on my bow. I mean, it's just a kind of a revolving circle with me.
Yeah, it can get that way when you have all the stuff. And me owning a shop for a few years and working at both Bass Pro and Cabela's, in archery department. You get kind of used to putting bows together, and it just kind of seems like you just I don't get it, don't think about it anymore.
You know, yeah, it definitely takes a lot of time to be good at being an archer. I mean, but I always got to tell myself that there's more in life than just archery too. I got to find me someday. I'm going to find some time to go fishing, which I haven't done in a couple years. But
Oh, yeah, it's kind of nice to get out, go fishing. But just take your bow with you and go bow fishing.
I do have a bow fishing bow.
That's pretty good too. I use my recurve for that, just because the
Yep.
compounds just different way of shooting, and I can just shoot recurves a lot quicker than I can a compound.
I've always used a recurve for bow fishing, but in a raffle, I won a bow fishing rig and haven't used it yet. It's collecting dust hanging up somewhere.
Oh,
But
yeah,
but
they've got some pretty nice setups for bow fishing, in the compounds. And
yeah, I I think it would definitely be a sport I would enjoy if I were to go out and put some time into it. That's but I have a bunch of friends that go a lot, and I can go with them if I were to ever ask. I just haven't yet.
yeah, you kind of sometimes have to pick what you do, because there's so many things to do out there. And not just in the archery field, but there's other things that keeps you busy. And uh, then you get family to deal with, and You can't ignore them too much anyway, because it's kind of fun being around family sometimes.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I enjoy being around my mom and dad and rest of the family. I mean, we're pretty easy going. No one gets too excited around here.
Well, that's a good thing sometimes.
Yeah, but yeah, it's getting ready to be hunting season. I'm sure you're getting ready up there, in Nebraska, aren't you?
Yeah, it opens up September 1st is when it actually opens up. So I probably won't be able to get out this year. I had some surgery and I'm still not healed up from it, so I can't even pull my bow back right now.
Oh, that'd be rough.
Yeah, until next Tuesday, I'm still on 25-pound weight restriction. I can't lift, pull, or push more than 25 pounds. And I was like, my bow's way more than that.
Yeah,
Even my recurve is, I think, a 40-pound bow.
yeah. I think that's what my recurve is also. It's either 40 or 45.
I do have a 25-pound, but I shoot right-handed and it's a left-handed bow, so I may make a string for it and at least have something I can go shoot, shooting left-handed, at least to, work up a little bit of strength once I get to where I can even pull that back.
Yeah.
So I'll just have to hear your hunting stories and everybody else's hunting stories.
Well, the best hunting story I have would be my elk hunting adventure where I shot a bull elk with my bow.
Cool. You have to tell us
Uh,
about that one.
growing up in Southwest Colorado, man, I played high school football and stuff, so I missed a couple of years of getting to go archery hunting. And then when I was a junior, we moved to Kansas. I let's see, I was 20. I pulled my archery tag for out there, and me and three buddies went out there with no longer owning horses, living in Kansas. It was a totally different experience for me. I knew where to
Yeah.
go, but you don't realize how heavy that pack gets until you actually strap it on and have to carry it up and down a mountainside. And three of me and two other buddies, three of us, we went down into the same spot my dad had brought me when I was younger and had a way too heavy of a pack and hiked it like 5 miles down the hill. My other buddies, they hadn't elk hunted at all.
Oh,
Well, the first morning they didn't get up and leave camp. I don't know if that was due to them being so exhausted on the walk in or if they just weren't quite ready for it mentally. I never really asked them why they didn't go that first morning. But that hunt was, I found some of the places I wanted to go. I checked some other places first. And that night I knew the next day I was going to get an elk. I had a pretty good feeling, and
yeah.
I woke up before everybody else. I blew a big old bugle right in the middle of camp to make sure everyone was up. I hiked on down the trail in the dark, and I got to the creek crossing. And when you hunt near water in the mountains, it drowns out a lot of noise. So you have to get up high enough that you can't hear the creek anymore to really get a good sense of what's around. But I got up to the first bench and I was thinking to myself, man, it'd be really nice to kill a bull elk right here. And half-heartedly, I gave out an elk call, and man, one bugled like 60 yards from me and come running in, and I got ready and knocked an arrow, and I didn't have my rangefinder with me. I left it at camp.
Oh,
But I judged yardage. I'm okay at it, I guess. And I remember thinking to myself, 30 yards, and I set my sight to 30, and I sent off an arrow, and I heard just a hard whack, and that noise of hitting a tree.
oh.
And and man, that kind of baffled me. The bull elk, he ran back another 15, 20 yards. I set my sight on to to 40 and I shot right underneath it.
Oh,
Now, only at this point have I realized that this elk is, man, freaking, it's a big elk. It was a big old 6x6. Anyone would have been happy to take this one home. I shouldn't have, but I shot my third and final arrow out of my quiver at it. I don't know how far the elk was. I don't even necessarily remember how far I shot at it for, but I know it wasn't 50. And then I found
long
myself
shot.
yeah, I found myself disarmed, freaking up on the mountainside, and started frantically searching for an arrow. The one I found was the one I had hit the tree, and to me, it would have been about perfect height. That bull elk, to me, got lucky that day, and there was a tree right there. I pulled my arrow out. I had a Rage broadhead on. I folded the blades back straight, hiked on up the hill, knowing that the elk were bugling, and I was going to hunt on. And I remember before I got to where I ended up killing an elk, I was walking through a big clearing, and you can get busted doing that. And I kind of knew better, but I ran through it anyway. And on the other side up the hill, there was a black bear sow with cubs.
Yeah.
And I was fortunate enough that the wind was not blowing their direction. I just kept moving. And then it wasn't far from there. I called in a 5x5. There was two of them. I shot the first one that walked up the hill with that Rage broadhead that I had pulled out of a tree, folded the blades out straight, and I shot that bull at 17 yards, and it didn't run 10 yards and fell over dead. And then,
Yeah, that's three arrows is kind of small quiver.
I had a 5 or 6 arrow quiver. I just only carried 3 with me. I didn't
Oh,
think I was going to need more than that. And
I've been in that situation before. Deer coming by and I missed a few, and it's like, okay, I ain't got any more arrows because I only had like 2 or 3 with me. That's all I had that was sharpened, and it's now I'm just sitting here watching the deer walk underneath the tree stand.
yeah, well, that was only the beginning of the adventure, was getting the elk.
Oh,
Because now it was first thing in the morning. I made some mistakes as a young hunter that I won't make now. But I quartered up my elk on the hillside, and I attempted to carry down one of the hind quarters. I was going to carry it into camp. I also had the back straps in my pack, because if I was going to lose anything, it wasn't going to be the back straps.
yeah.
And carrying that hind leg down the hill, I almost had a tumble, man. I slipped, and freaking, it's fortunate that I didn't drop, or I dropped the meat and caught myself. And I watched that big old hind leg roll down the hill up over the side of a small cliff, but it would have been a good 40-foot drop. I was fortunate there. I then had to walk farther than I wanted to, because I had to walk around to go retrieve the meat. And I remember I was worn out at that point, and I stashed the meat in the creek, and now I just have the back straps, and I got a 2-hour hike up to the trail. But I remember I was gonna walk into the camp and tell my buddies I shot a grouse, because I had blood on my hands and stuff, and I know that they would have noticed that immediately. So I didn't try and wash it off or anything, and man, I couldn't even get the lie out of my mouth. I remember they're like, "Did you get one?" I'm like, "Yeah, I got one." I'm like, then they're like, "Oh, well, where is it?" I'm like, "It's up on the mountainside," but it was a little late in the day in their minds, and I kind of agreed to go and try and retrieve any of the meat other than the one hind quarter that I had carried down the hillside already. I should have just went and got it. I ended up losing one of the hind legs to some rot. But not knowing that, the next morning, me and my 2 friends went up the hill to retrieve the meat. And before we left, they asked, "Hey, should we bring our bows?" And I'm like, "That's up to you." I'm going up there to carry meat, but I don't care if you bring your bow, but if you shoot an elk while we're up there, we're going to be in a world of trouble. And
Yeah.
the one buddy, Andy, he brought his bow. My buddy Frank did not. We went and started retrieving the meat, and there was bulls bugling all over the place.
Oh no.
My buddy Andy, who brought his bow, he's like, do you guys care? I'm going to go ahead and see if I can at least put a stock in. And he headed up the hill and left his pack and everything right there with us. And I don't know why he didn't bring his pack with him. Just forgot it, I guess. And me and Frank, we ended up deboning all the meat right there and getting it all ready to carry down the hill. Well, Andy had been gone for a while. And it's like, well, I'm going to blow a bugle and see if he's nearby. I bugle, and what seemed like him, because it wasn't a very strong bugle, was right up the hill from us. I'm like, oh, that's him right there. Then me and Frank were just messing around with the cow calls and the bugle, just making whatever noise we can to help Andy get down to us. And all of a sudden, I'm like, Frank, right there. There's a bull elk at freaking 25, 30 yards away from us.
And
And it
no
was
bow.
and he had no bow. And it was I think it was the other bull that was with the one I ended up shooting. And Frank could have got it. That was Frank's best chance at getting an elk, because he still hasn't got one now, and he's out there right now hunting. Him and Andy are both out this year elk hunting, which good luck to those two.
Yeah.
But me and Frank left Andy's pack up on the hillside because we waited there longer and Andy still hadn't returned. And it's like, well, he's going to come back for his pack. All of his water, everything's in here. Me and Frank carried the rest of the meat down the hill. I got a little turned around and walked down some of the steeper side of the hill.
Oh.
Frank was pretty mad at me, but we got back up to camp and Andy came laboring in 2 hours after us, going, man, I shouldn't have left my pack. I got too far away and had no water and he's like, it was a long walk back to my pack. And then the next morning we carried out all the meat up to my Jeep, and I had the bugling teeth, and I sent a picture of them to my dad and just asking him, you know what these are? And that's how I told my dad I shot an elk.
Yeah. Very cool.
But then right after that, I ended up killing my first whitetail buck and buck of any form. And it ended up being a 180-inch monster.
Oh, man.
Like
So
2 weeks after I got home.
That's big for a buck anywhere, around here in the Midwest.
Yes, sir.
That's a big one.
I didn't even know it was that big when I shot it. Me and my dad had a little chunk of private property we were getting to hunt. I guess it was a little longer than 2 weeks after I got home, because it was opening day of pheasant season. Or opening weekend of pheasant season when I shot it. And I was sitting in a ground blind, and the night before there had been some pheasant hunters that had walked through this patch of trees. I don't know if they were trespassing or not, but sitting in the ground blind, I hear something come walking by, and it sounded like it was walking right up to the blind. I don't know why, but whoever opened that door, they were going to get drug in, or at least that was my thought.
Yeah.
And I'm sitting there in the dark, all prepared, getting ready, and a fairly nice 8-point buck comes walking by right outside the door. I could almost touched it. And it walks by. It ended up walking downwind of me, and I didn't have ozonics or anything back then. And it walked downwind and walked to a corn pile we had. And I was taking a picture of it. And I was going to send it to my dad, asking him, you think this is a good enough buck to shoot? And most people that had never gotten a buck probably would have shot that buck.
Yeah.
But as I'm taking the picture, I hear something to my left, and I turn, and to my left at about 40 yards was that the buck I ended up shooting. And I dropped my phone. I picked up my bow, which I won in a raffle. And I ended up I shot that buck and it ran off with my arrow in it. I texted my dad, just shot a nice 8-point. He went and picked me up and we went back to the farmer's house we were staying at and relaxed for a little bit, had some breakfast, drank some coffee, and went back out. And our friend Russell and my dad, they were the first two that had walked up to it. I hadn't even seen it yet. And I hear Russell, it's over here. Holy cow, there's no ground shrinkage with this one. And man, it was a huge buck. That was my two best hunting moments that I can say I've had in terms of archery.
Yeah, those are kind of exciting times when you get out there and you see stuff like that, and um, it's always nice. This stuff you see, sitting out there quiet and in a tree stand or something, and all the nature that runs around, and they don't know you're there, and that's kind of the cool part.
Yeah, I've seen all kinds of different stuff while I was sitting in a tree stand. Owls land feet from my head, and it's like, man, I'd like to get a picture of it. But as soon as you move, the owl knows you're there and ends up flying
Yeah,
off. You see their eyes get real big, and that's always really neat.
yeah, you have to have the camera ready and rolling in order to catch them doing that.
And then I I remember a story that my dad was telling you about shooting an arrow up in the air,
Oh yeah.
and I don't have many stories quite like that one, but I do have a story about shooting an arrow up in the air
Oh
as
yeah,
a young
okay.
as a young kid. My cousin, he's same age as me, and he had a bow and stuff, or he did not have a bow at the time. He hadn't got one yet. And he asked me, well, how far does it shoot? And I had this one particular arrow we called my lucky purple arrow. It was the only one I had like it in my quiver. All the rest were different. And I don't know why, but I chose my lucky purple arrow and I pointed it up in the air and shot it, see how far it could go. And it went rather far because I never found it.
Oh.
And I remember coming back to my dad crying that I had lost my lucky purple arrow. And my dad, being a good dad, went out and bought me a half dozen new arrows, and they were all the same as that one lucky purple arrow. That was the only time that I can ever really remember doing anything like that. I think I learned my lesson after the
Yeah.
first time.
Yeah, if you're gonna shoot an arrow, you need the flu arrows so they don't fly very far. And they
Yeah,
drop down so they're stinging in the ground. Who knows how far that went, because it's not unusual. There's hunters that'll take 100-yard shots and they're not even pointing up in the air. So
no,
it could have went 300 yards
yeah,
or more.
I have no idea. I remember I was at my cousin's house and there was pinyon trees and all sorts of other stuff on their property. It was probably sticking up in the top of a tree.
It could be.
But yeah, I learned my lesson pretty quick that day.
Yeah. Yeah, that's one thing you want to keep away from doing, is shooting up in the air too much.
You know, I I can say I've done it a couple times as an adult, but not on purpose.
Yeah, things happen sometimes, especially those that sit there and bring their arm up and start drawing back with the arm up and then dropping it down.
You
For
know,
one thing, they're using the weakest part of their arms to pull the bow, because you're pushing down on it, and it also just leads, chances for it to go flying up.
yeah, I've found myself just making a not necessarily sky drawing to the fullest, but pointing it far enough up in the air that I knew I wasn't getting that arrow back.
Yeah, yeah, that's why I lean forward a little bit and point the arrow at the target as I'm drawing and standing up. That keeps it pointing at the target and keeps me from leaning back as I'm drawing. You stand up, you draw, you end up leaning back. So kind of things that I've done for decades.
Yeah, it's my dad always taught me to, when drawing my bow back, to point the arrow straight at the target.
Yeah.
Eh,
A little safer that way.
You know, and sometimes you get lucky if something bad happens, because I've seen my dad get a 12 at a 3D shoot. He was pulling his bow back and his release went off, and he was cursing up a storm a little bit. And I'm like, dude, what are you so mad about? He goes, I didn't even get my bow halfway pulled back. I'm like, well, dude, you're in the 12.
Yeah. Well, people that use a release and put their finger on the trigger instead of behind the trigger, I'll have a tendency to do that sometimes. And
Yeah.
that's why I always
Well,
teach behind the trigger.
if I remember right, my dad was using a thumb release,
Oh, yeah.
and me and him both have a similar problem with finding a release that fits our hands. Both
Yeah.
of us have pretty large hands, and his release, it just didn't quite fit right. He had a real hard time. Every time you try and let down, uh, the fat of his hand would hit the back of the release and it would send the arrow off. So he was always really nervous trying to let down. And myself, I shoot a hinge, and there so there's only a select few hinges that I can find where the head of the release doesn't hit my fingers. And so I remember when he was he kind of, I think he had a little bit of a herky jerky motion,
Yeah.
and that's probably what set his release off.
Yeah. Yeah. The handheld ones, I've got one, and I make sure when I'm drawing back that that thumb is not anywhere around where that trigger is, and pull back. And then once I get back, then I put my thumb on the release itself and kind of trap it in the meaty part of my hand. But yeah, definitely not a beginner's release because you're going to hurt yourself.
Yeah, and as my dad told some people, I've punched myself in the face before, and it's
Yeah.
not fun.
No, because you're drawing back right to your anchor point, which is the corner of your mouth. So if it goes off, it generally it's going to smack you in the face. And
And when everyone that told me when I first started trying to hinge, they always told me, pull towards your chest. Well, even doing that, I still, when I pull my bow back, I try and consciously pull more towards my chest. But when you start pulling on that string, it doesn't matter if you're intending to do anything. If
right.
your release malfunctions or breaks, or it, for some reason, that hand always comes back about right here.
Well, and if you pull towards your chest, you're using more chest muscles. Bring that arm up, use your back muscles, and actually draws easier, so you're not struggling so much. And yeah, I've seen some they drawing way too much weight and they kind of struggle and lean it back and draw it back and then raise it up. And it's like, how you ever going to draw on a deer that's fairly close where you're at, that the movement's going to, alert them? You can't draw if you're doing that.
Yeah, I don't know any animal that wouldn't see you do that.
Yeah. Yeah. That's why I never teach anybody to draw down and up or raise your arm up and drop it down. And, um, you just got to be most efficient with it. And the most efficient way is to draw, use them back muscles. The only way to really engage them is get that elbow up. If you're doing fingers or release, the hand can twist, but keep that elbow up so it uses those back muscles. And, those develop really quick, which I'm going to have to develop again. Yeah, so yeah, I got to be able to shoot my bow. At
Yes,
first, I got to
sir.
be able to walk more in about 6 minutes or 12 minutes.
Yeah, it's, and injuries. My dad, he had to sit out almost the whole season this year because he had some elbow problems before he could get to the doctor and get it fixed.
Yeah, he was telling us about that. And when you have an injury, it's tough to come back from them sometimes because it takes so long, and you want to keep shooting or doing whatever you're doing, and then it sets you back, and yeah.
Yeah, the frustration levels that I would just see him start going through if he were to try and shoot his bow, and knowing he's in pain doing it, and he's struggling to shoot his bow, and now the upset of struggling is in your mind. So
Yeah, I know I've been struggling with this surgery. I had a triple bypass in April, and I'm still working through it because I had to go back in because it wasn't healing, and it opened back up after 10 weeks. So then it's 12 weeks started over, and next Tuesday the 12 weeks is finally up. But sitting around for 5 months, basically sitting in a chair all day long because couldn't do anything. Um, and then couldn't even really walk or anything. So now I'm finally getting out that, after I walk about 6 minutes, I'm starting to get tired already.
I actually got into, now that I think about it, 3D archery came about because I had a shoulder injury that kind of derailed my college baseball career.
Oh yeah.
And because right before I went off to college, I sold my compound bow to a friend, and went off to college, and then ended up finding out I had a pre-existing injury, and that I was working when I got it. I wasn't even playing baseball, but I couldn't pass the physical, and because it was pre-existing, I had to go see a doctor and stuff. And I went and saw a doctor, and I he kind of told me that I should probably not play baseball no more. Pretty much what he told me.
Yeah, need a different doctor. Don't say you can't do it. Well, what do I have to do so I can do it?
Yeah, but as a young kid, you get one piece of advice and you kind of run with it. Well, I had transferred colleges a couple of times and ended up back home, going to work. And I went out, me and my dad. I think my mom was there, but I know my dad was there. I bought a Bear Legion from Dick's Sporting Goods while they still had hunting stuff. And when I bought that, that would have been like late February, I think. I remember asking my
Yeah.
dad, like, let's go to a couple of 3D shoots this year. That was the start of the addiction. And ended up going to probably the toughest 3D shoot I could have ever entered for never ever competing in one.
Oh,
And it was, I remember my dad talking to you about how he brought 3 arrows with him. I brought 6 with me, and I didn't lose all of them. I think I lost 2. And then the next day I lost 2 more, and only ended up having 2 after that. But I got my butt kicked. I wasn't anywhere. I think I came in last place or second to
yeah.
last. And then after that, I was kind of addicted to that. The competitiveness I loved, and then trying to beat my dad at something.
Yeah.
Because back then he was still a really good shot, and his eyes hadn't quite gotten as bad as they are now. And I remember almost every tournament, my goal was to just beat my dad.
Yeah.
And that was probably the wrong philosophy for me to have back then. I probably would have did a lot better if I would have just concentrated on what I was doing rather than what he was doing.
Right. Yeah,
And
just beat your last score is the goal you really needed to have, but you
yeah,
know,
and
whatever
then
motivates you.
yeah, now every year I set 3 different goals for myself. I have like my lofty expectation, the goal I think I can reasonably achieve, and then I have a minimum goal, and I set all 3 of those up. And my minimum goal, I don't always reach that one either. Last year I came just short of reaching my minimum goal.
Well, it gives you something to shoot for, though.
Yeah, and so next year my goals will be pretty similar. Like I think my minimum goal last year was to come in top 10 at a national event for ASA. I came in, I tied with somebody for 7th, but due to bonus rings, I ended up in 11th.
Oh, figures.
You know, and it was the last two shots of the on both days. I shot on Friday and Saturday, and both days I came just short of shooting even. Last day I shot a half inch under the low 12 for an 8, finished 2 down. The next day, the last target, I was already 2 down. I was trying to get back to even. I shot just to the left of the low 12 for a 10 and ended up at 2 down. And if I would have hit either one of those bonus rings or even just got a 10 the first day, I would have ended up in 6th.
So that was
Which,
close, though. It just, one arrow, it didn't quite go in where you wanted it. And
you know, and my last or 3D season this year, it was a struggle for me because I was using my dad's bow, and I can tell you, me and him do not set our bows up anywhere near the same.
yeah, he was telling me about your bow, and then he'd give up his bow for you to shoot. And
Yeah, I continuously thank him for letting me use his bow all year this year, last season. And I finally got it figured out, and he was able to start shooting his bow again.
good.
And I gave him his bow back. I switched over to my hunting bow, and I'm really fortunate that I didn't try and use my hunting bow for 3D season because I I can't say that it's my most accurate shooting bow I've ever had. I'll
Oh,
be able to I'll be accurate enough to shoot a deer with it, but it just doesn't quite fit me right.
just a little off. Yeah.
Yeah, it's way different than my target bow, and it's two different brands also, which
Oh, yeah.
I don't know if it's the grip, it could just be me, but for some reason my hunting bow, it just doesn't quite fit me right.
Yeah, that's the thing. I had when I had my shop, um, Browning Archery had a bow that I thought was really cool bow because it had the top there was two cams. They're counter rotated. The idea was one rotates one over the other way should be a little smoother. And I tried to set it up for me, and there's and I've been setting up bows for years at that time, and as I just could not get that bow to fit me. There's nothing I could do to get that bow to fit me. And it's like I wanted to shoot it, but it just wouldn't fit. So I ended up selling it to somebody. Who knows? I had a store, but it's like, okay, goes back on the rack and we'll sell it to somebody.
And yeah, I've already told most of my friends after I shoot a buck this year, if I that fortunate, that as soon as this hunting season's over for me, that bow is going to be off the team and someone's going to get a good deal.
Yeah. Well, sometimes you gotta, if it don't fit you just right, it's hard to shoot. And you get out hunting and you get them longer shots and it don't fit you right, you know, good chance of
Yeah,
missing.
I've kind of put a cap on myself this year for roughly I want the deer to be round 50 yards and closer if I'm going to take a shot at it this year with this setup, just because I already know that I'm not the most accurate with it. I'm not as confident as I can be in it, but I feel as if I under 50, I'm going to be all right.
Well, you kind of figured out what your limit is and stay within it, and that'll make go a little bit smoother.
Because usually with my hunting setup, I usually run a 1-pin sight, but this year I sold my hunting sight and means of buying another one and allocated that money to something else.
Oh,
I didn't I didn't stick with my plan there, and I have a 5-pin. I put a 5-pin sight on my bow this year, which I actually haven't split pins since my first year shooting 3D archery, which is been 10, 11 years now. And it had been a while since I had tried to split pins, and it's a completely different challenge.
Yeah. You got to remember to pick the right pin. First, you got to remember to pick a pin.
Yeah.
I how do I know? I did that once. Forgot to pick a pin, and the deer was 15 yards away. Completely missed it.
Yeah. And now the sight I have compared to the sight I had when I was a younger man, I don't want to say young because I'm still young, but the pins in it, the top one was green, then the next one was red, the middle one was yellow, and then I think it went red and green again. But now I think the pins on my hunting site, the top two are just green. There is no, the third one's red, but I really have to pay attention because there isn't that difference in pin color.
Yeah. I always like my top pin to be red because I see it better than the greens and the yellows. And if I, some sites you don't have a choice, but ones that do, I always make the top one red, because that's one I'm going to pick up first. And most of my shots are going to be with the top pin anyway,
Yeah.
especially now as I'm over twice your age and I don't see out those distances like I used to. So everything's worse. I got to be up close.
Well, none of the deer I've shot have been over 40. They've all been within that. So I'm usually pretty fortunate of not having to take too far of shots. I don't even have there's only one spot I have right now to hunt that I could even shoot out that far. So planning on nice 20-yard chip shot.
Yeah. My first year was at 40, and then I haven't shot one anywhere close to that since.
I've I think I've shot a bunch of does, and they were all 25 yards and in. I don't think I've shot one yet that was past that. All the bucks I've shot, my first buck was roughly 35 yards. The other two I've shot were under 20 yards. But yeah, I'm getting that itch starting. Can't wait for hunting season. I did see Josh Trollinger. He's been a guest on your show.
Yeah.
I saw he got a tick bite and put out a warning to people to make sure to wear permethrin on their clothes if they're out hunting early, because I guess right now he's pretty sick from a tick bite.
Oh yeah, some of them can be pretty nasty.
And ticks love me.
No.
I get them. I have them crawling on me all the time, it seems like.
Yeah, definitely get out there, put some stuff on to keep the ticks off, because until we get a good frost, they're going to be around here, which is, who knows, it may not be till middle of November around here before we get a good frost.
Yeah, I'm betting it'll be November here in Kansas before we get any
Yeah.
kind of good freeze. If
Yeah,
that,
I'm only about 150 miles north of you, so
yeah. Some reason you all keep getting all the rain though, keeps going right by us.
yeah, we've had quite a bit of rain and some wind. We had the winds come through here a few weeks back. They was getting 90-mile-an-hour winds, and we had a big oak tree that just knocked the big old branch probably 100 feet up into one of the other trees, and it's got that split. So you got to wait for a guy to come around and be able to pull it down, because who we normally have do trees, yeah, we're not getting out doing them. We need somebody that actually knows how to pull them out of there, because they're not very big branches. You're gonna have to go up there and basically just cut parts of it off, and then hope it doesn't cause more problems. But yeah, we're gonna have to take a whole tree out plus a part of another one because it's split, and put some ratchet straps around it to hold it to make sure it doesn't keep splitting.
Yeah, I always feel bad for people when their trees are broken in their front yard. I like trees. I think people here in Kansas cut too many of them down.
Yeah, we have a lot of them around the house. You keep getting close, solar panels, solar panels. There's no sun on our house. The
Yeah.
only building we have is our garage, the only place you'd get any sun because it's surrounded by trees and they're getting kind of old. So I think some of them are a little bit hollow. Uh, I know this one that broke over, it's got some hollow spots in it too. You can kind of see it. So it was needing to come down anyway, but it'd be nice to take it down controlled instead of wind blowing it down. And
Yeah. Me and my dad, we're gonna have to go out here soon, cut a couple of trees up out by that fell down by one of our hunting spots, blocking our walk path in and stuff.
oh yeah. So when does deer season start there in Kansas?
Next week, I believe, sometime.
Next
I'm
week?
I'm not 100% positive. I usually don't go out until October. The the main spot that I hunt doesn't hold a ton of deer. It's more of a travel corridor,
Oh yeah.
and if I if I go out early, I it'll just be to shoot a doe because that's all I'll be around.
Yeah, and right now, this next year, I probably won't be able to get out at all, but those fine.
Yeah,
You know,
I
I don't have to shoot a buck. I shoot more does than do bucks, but I don't hunt specifically for bucks. But if one comes by, and I have a tag for it, I'm not going to pass it up. But
yeah,
um,
I I'm definitely planning on putting a couple of freezer queens in the ice box this year. But I'm an opportunist hunter. I try and shoot one of the first mature bucks that comes in. I I think people that pass up on deer have either they've shot enough in their life that they no longer care about how big the horns are, or they're legitimately trophy hunting and they're just scared to admit it.
yeah, yeah, I
Which,
I had one deer. I don't think I've told this story very many times, but we was out hunting, we're a little bit late getting in our tree. It was an afternoon evening hunt. So I get to the tree and I climb up and I'm in the tree. I've just got my bow hanging up and here's this buck coming walking down the trail to me. So I grab my bow, line it up, and I see where it's at. It steps out, I shoot, and we're dragging it out, and it's in the back of my pickup truck. And that's when I had my store and it's in the back of the pickup truck till I could, do something with it. And I'm sitting down in the range. I'm looking at, I can see the antlers sticking above the back of the truck. It's like, this is good size. It's like 135 or something like. I'd never shot one that big, and I never looked. I seen it was a buck. I never looked at the horns after that until I was sitting there in the truck. Because I was focused on where I wanted the arrow go.
yeah, the first buck I shot, I knew it was a good size buck. I didn't see how big it was. The first bull elk I shot at with my bow, I I didn't notice that how big it really was until after my second shot at it. And that's a little bit of that buck fever starts
Yeah,
reaching you. As if you're I've had buck fever before, and bad things can happen when that happens to you. Unfortunately, 2 years ago, I wounded just an absolute monster of a buck. Everything worked right for me, and then it didn't. I made a poor shot. I shot it high in the shoulder, and buck ended up living for a while anyway. A local farmer sent me a picture of it with the arrow still in it. I was sick. I didn't even want to go hunting until
yeah,
he sent me that picture that the buck was still at that time still alive. I believe one of the other local hunters ended up getting him because he never showed up back on trail camera ever again. But yeah. And then one time elk hunting, my dad called me in an elk, and I remember I was kneeling, and I was so uncomfortable the way I was just positioned. I remember looking at my dad, I'm like, Dad, I need you to to I need to stand up. He's like, no, stay kneeling. I'm like, no, I need to stand up. He's like, well, whatever, don't move or don't make too much movement. I stand back up, and he called this elk in for me. It was roughly 15 yards. And I remember pulling back my bow. I had it full draw, and looking through my peep sight, I could notice some branches from a small tree that wasn't much, or pretty close to the bull. And I tried to just duck my knees a little bit. And that bull turned off and took off running.
Yeah.
It was like 8 years before I got another chance at a bull elk. That was my first real opportunity with the bow at one. And
Yeah, those crazy branches, they get in your way. You don't see them, and luckily you've seen it, so you didn't shoot and
you
hit a
know,
branch and deflect the arrow. And
I don't know if it would have deflected the arrow though without trying to take the shot.
yeah,
I thinking back now, it probably would have just been fine, and I would have got my first elk much younger. But
yeah,
or I could have hit the tree and missed.
yeah. Worse yet, wounded it, run off, and not be able to find it and die anyway. And
Yeah, yeah. I've only wounded two animals that I didn't end up recovering. One was a doe, and then one was that buck. The doe I wounded, I shot at it almost straight down at like 8 feet, and seemingly I put it right between her shoulders, and it took off running and fell over. I kind of got greedy, and here in Kansas, you're allowed to shoot multiple does. I had another tag. I shot at another doe, and I shot just underneath it. And it took off running out in the field a little farther. And when that happened, the doe I had shot, it took off running. It fell over back farther out in the field. I'm like, all right, got it still. Climb down. I call my dad to go and get it. I walk over to go grab the arrow that I missed, make sure I missed. And I couldn't find that arrow. And I look over, and now my doe is no longer standing out there. I walk back to the tree stand that I shot it underneath. I couldn't find my arrow over there. And I tried to find blood. I couldn't find no blood, no sign of the deer of which direction it actually had went. And I lost that doe. I didn't find it.
huh. Yeah, you never know. I know a hunting partner of mine. We tracked this one, little bitty little drops, you know, and it was, we might walk 20, 30 yards. We found another one, and I think we tracked this thing about a half mile. Then there was nothing, and it. I don't think it was a good enough hit to really do much more than make it bleed a little bit. But um, yeah, you have that stuff sometimes, and you don't like to. You spend time looking for them and looking and looking and looking, and then at some point you got to say, well, forget it.
Yeah, that's one thing my dad taught me growing up. Always at least walk over there and make sure you missed.
Right.
Because I remember elk hunting, we were rifle hunting. Me and him took a couple of shots at the time. I don't think he had a rangefinder, but he didn't bring it with him. And rangefinders were still relatively big and cumbersome at this time. Most people didn't have the small ones yet.
Yeah.
And I remember we walked down there to take a look, and we didn't see any sign of us hitting the elk, and had to walk all the way back up this big hill. And our buddies up there, they're like, man, do you guys know you were at like 500 yards when you're at that tree line? No, we thought it was more like 300. And well, it made sense why we missed. We were 200 extra yards.
Yeah. That's a lot to be off.
Yeah. And my dad ended up shooting a cow elk that same day, knowing at that point then it was 500 yards. And I didn't get another shot. I had a bull tag. so I didn't get to shoot. And him and his buddy Hugh, they both shot cow elk shortly after that. But Hugh had a rangefinder with him, and when we first took those shots, he was in a different spot with his son. But yeah, that was one of the first times I had to walk quite a long ways to go take a look. And
Yeah, that's quite a walk to walk out 500 yards, to find it.
and
Even if it's flat, that's a
yeah,
long walk.
it was a real steep downhill walk, and you don't realize how far it actually is until you actually have to walk back up that hill.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Walk down 500 is bad enough. Walking up that's a challenge.
Yeah, it was a lot slower moving.
Yeah, yeah.
And
You
then
don't go up the hills too much too quick.
no. And then but yeah, that's ever since then I've always tried to make sure to walk down and see if I at least got anything. I've never shot at anything that far, even with the rifle, and then with my bow, I haven't shot at nothing like that. No super
Yeah.
crazy distances at any animals.
Well, 100 yards is a real long shot with a bow because it takes so long to get there. One little step, you go from a perfect kill shot to a gut shot and
Or
or
a
even a
puff of
miss.
wind, or
Yeah,
your adrenaline's going, so you're probably not going to make the most perfect shot. So I,
no,
I've shot my bow at 100 yards quite a bit, and man, it's the consistency is just not there to.
no,
I mean, if some people, Levi Morgan is a lot better shot than me. He shoots those animals at quite a distance, but all I understand, like some of those guys are shooting deer at 60, 70, and 80 yards because they get away with a lot more movement and they can move
right.
around a little bit. And I don't know. I'd be pretty nervous doing that.
I would need binoculars at 100 yards. They'd be so blurry that I wouldn't be able to figure out where I'm shooting anyway. So
Yeah, that would be a different challenge. And another thing I'd like to try is rattling in a buck while I'm on the ground, either using a decoy or just hiding on the ground somewhere. I've never rattled in a buck, but that's always looked super cool to me. And sitting in a tree stand, that's not my favorite thing to do. I spot and stock is a way more fun method of hunting to me than spending hours sitting in a tree.
well, as you get a little bit older, the walking is a little more difficult. The sitting is nice,
Yeah,
or standing.
I fully understand that, but I don't know. Just sitting there, I enjoy nature, but when you keep sitting in the same spot over and over again, nature seems to get a little mundane to me.
Yeah,
The same
it's the
two
same thing.
squirrels running around making the same noise every day.
Yeah, yeah. That's why you want to have multiple places to go so that you're not quite
You know,
so bored with the same location. But if you're shooting deer, I'll take that.
it's always more exciting when deer walk in for sure.
Right. Even if it is
And
the same scenery.
you know, this year I'm actually not running any trail cameras just because it seems like the spot I have to hunt every time a buck comes across the trail camera, I won't see him ever again.
Yeah, the couple of spots I've got to hunt. I had trail cameras up um, last year, and last time I put them out there for some reason, not I don't think any of them got turned on or something because I had no pictures. But the ones I had from the year before, there's three different bucks that come through there. One nice one and one growing up one little bitty thing. Um, Probably son, dad, and grandpa. But they're coming through at anywhere from 10 o'clock to 3, 4 o'clock at night.
Yeah.
Most of the does come through at night. Once in a while you'll see some during the day. So um, that mostly at night. You can't hunt deer at night.
No. Well, I think you're actually in Kansas. I believe you're, or it might have changed. That it was kind of a vague law, I thought, that you could shoot a deer at night, but you couldn't use any form of light.
Oh yeah, that
So
that means you got to have probably snow covered and a full moon and no clouds.
yeah, if you're and still got to be able to, you'd have to use a recurve because I don't think you could see through a peep sight, even as that.
No. Well, I had one night I was hunting and I watched my pins because my pins quit glowing. It's pretty much I'm done hunting anyway. So no matter what time it is, I'm done. During the day, I'll turn a light on the pins because the trees block all the sun and they don't really glow very well. And it all the leaves were gone, full moon, snow cover. I'm waiting for my pins to quit glowing. They never quit glowing. I was like, it's gotta be after time. I looked at I was an hour past shooting time. I could still see my pins, my fiber optic pins. And I walked out with no flashlight or nothing because I didn't need it. It's like that's one and only time I ever had that happen where I was out in a tree stand and it never really got dark because the moon come up and it was, it looked like it was, just that last half hour of shooting time and it just never changed. Normally it gets dark, you can't see anything. No, that was one of those perfect nights. The moon lit up everything because of perfect white cover all over the ground and it just reflected that moon.
Yeah, I've only hunted deer with snow on the ground, I think once, and I think the snow melted by the time I climbed out of the tree stand.
Oh,
We haven't gotten much snow here in this area of Kansas in a while. I mean, if we're lucky, we'll get 6 inches a year.
yeah, sometimes we get, we've had years where, we might get 3 or 4 inches the whole year, and other times we might get 5 or 6 in one snow.
Yeah, it's I growing up in Colorado, I remember we'd get feet of snow.
Yeah,
And people think they know what feet of snow looks like, but if you've never actually experienced it, you don't know.
no. Well, I can remember a few times when I was a kid getting so much snow that, you had to dig your cars out to find where the car is at.
Yeah.
We get lots of snow and now it's not quite so much, but uh,
And then, like in Colorado, the school buses, they were 4-wheel drive. I don't remember many snow days ever growing up.
oh yeah. Well,
Out,
school bus can get you there.
yeah. And then moving out here to Kansas, I only did my senior year here, but even if there was a threat of snow, they would cancel school.
Oh yeah.
And
Now they seem to cancel it just at the drop of a hat. It's, oh, we might get a lot of rain. Okay, cancel school.
yeah, yeah, it wasn't like that when I was growing up. Not at my school anyway. It might have been starting other places, but yeah, I remember the first bus that I got on was still a stick shift and it was 4-wheel drive, but I remember it had a 5-speed in it.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, it was definitely different growing up in Colorado compared to the 1 year I did here in Kansas.
Yeah, Kansas is a little bit further south. Not much, but it's a little bit further south, so you have a little bit warmer weather. But
I was
um,
no, Kansas is farther north of where I was at.
no, I mean for me here.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, because I'm right here in between Omaha and Lincoln. I'm not sure. Kansas City is almost straight south of us, and you're I forget which way from Kansas City, but
We're 3 hours west of Kansas City.
okay, you're out west. Yeah.
Yeah, it's it's definitely a different climate. I don't know
Yeah.
if I'll ever get used to it.
Yeah, it's everything's a little different. I pretty much grew up mostly here in Nebraska. And I've lived in Texas and Indiana and um, well, Idaho when I was really, really young, but I don't remember it. But yeah, just mostly here. So I'm kind of used to the weather here, and it changes, you know, every few years it changes. There's something different, and changes again. And one year we might not have much rain or snow, and next year we got all the rain and snow we can handle. And
Yeah, I work outside, so I prefer it not rain much.
yeah, yeah, when you're working outside, rain is not much fun, and both you and your dad do the construction, so that's a lot of outside work.
Yeah, it's I don't I would actually rather if my feet didn't have to get muddy, because that's what wears you out, the super muddy, heavy boots
Oh yeah,
or shoes that at the end of the day you're just worn out, and then knowing the next day it's going to be muddy again, and that wears on you. I could work out in the rain, no problem, but I don't want there to be mud.
yeah, yeah. That mud, it's hard to walk in.
Yeah. It's out here, it just sticks to you. Super high mounts of clay.
Yeah, and almost like your every step your foot's glued to the ground, and you got to break that suction and lift up each foot, and
Yeah, it gets tiresome real quick.
yeah.
Getting back to archery, do you shoot any kind of competitive archery or anything like that?
Not anymore. I used to do some of the local 3D shoots. I really wasn't too the targets didn't really do anything for me. I just didn't really care to do the target competitions. I just shoot a lot of spots because that helps you develop your skill. Then I like the 3Ds because it helps you develop the yardage judging. But shooting at a foam animal is a different spot you're going to pick than shooting at a real animal. So um, that don't help you picking spots, but it does help you get used to shooting at the animal silhouette.
Yeah. Yeah, there I think a lot of people, myself, I like I said, it's totally different shot process on an animal than it is a target.
Oh yeah,
In terms of picking the spot anyway. I mean, but a lot more trying to go to some more fun shoots and stuff like that. So it's not always just doing competitiveness, but
yeah, and a lot of the 3D shoots we'd go to. A buddy of mine that we went to a lot of them. We didn't care if we were last and next to last or first and second. The only thing that mattered was uh, did I beat Randy or Randy beat me this time? Because we
yeah,
shot together most every time we're shooting together, and it's basically who got to give the crap on the way home and who had to take it. Next
yeah,
week, the next one, it might be different. So we were really close and in scores, and we both try figure out. My goal was to average an 8 on every target. Average an 8, you've got a kill shot,
yeah, yeah.
and
It's a pretty good goal.
yeah, that's what I want to do on the 40 targets. Average an 8 on the 40 targets, and you know that was kind of my goal to make sure I tried staying there. I remember I think I took 6 arrows in my first 3D shoot, and I was in 3 targets and down an arrow already because I couldn't find it. And I was hoping to finish the 40 targets with the whole quiver. And, you know, then I got better and better. And now I don't expect to lose too many arrows. Once in a while you will, but it's been a while since I've been able to shoot a 3D event because, other things going on. And
Yeah, like I said, I try and shoot all of them. I like to go to the fun shoots, the competitive shoots. I just enjoy shooting my bow. It's kind of my solitude where I can get away from what's going on in the world or going on at work and stuff like that.
Yeah. Well, nice about shooting your bow is you've got to concentrate on one thing. You can't be thinking about nothing else. So you have to block all that out. And if you can't do that, you might as well not shoot that day,
Yeah.
or at least for a while, go do something else and then get back into it. But yeah, that's one thing you've always got to do is you got to clear your mind when you're shooting a bow.
Yeah. It's every part of it's a process and things, oh, it just slows things down in my mind shooting my bow. I think that's what I enjoy most about it. It just gets me away from any of the other stresses in life.
Yeah.
A lot of people, they probably see me and are like, no way you're having fun. But I, I guess my face doesn't always show my emotions. But yeah. No, I hear smile, Jay. I hear that a lot. But no, I promise people I'm having fun.
Yeah.
That's that's one thing about archery is it can be stressful at times too. I mean, my dad talks about the mental side of archery, and I had to learn myself. I mean, just to get better and be able to compete better, you have to keep your emotions in check. And
Right.
man, I've seen people snap arrows and stuff in the last couple of over their knee just because in the last couple of shots they felt they made a poor shot and they were ended up being all it ended up being all right for them. They either made the podium still or ended up winning, but they had lost their cool a little bit, and a lot of people talked about that for a long time, and I didn't want to be that guy. So
Yeah.
I kind of started making sure that I stayed a little more calm on the course. I mean, I, I will admit, I have some choice words if I make a mistake or something like that, but I try and keep my freak out sessions to a minimum, usually one or two words, and I try and just. They always say move on to the next target, one shot at a time. I mean,
Yeah.
that's hard to do, but it if I seem when I do that, I seemingly do a lot better.
Yeah. Well, when you think about it, what somebody says, if I say don't miss, what are you thinking about?
And try not to miss.
Yeah, you're thinking about missing. That's the thing you're thinking about. So like, don't miss. You got miss in your mind. And that's hard to get around because next thing you know, you're thinking, okay, don't miss. I can't miss. What are you saying? You said mostly you miss. So now you're gonna miss. So that's kind of the mental game that you have to go through is, you know, you got to focus on, somebody says don't miss, that's the worst thing you can say to somebody because now that puts that missing in their mind. They've got to be able to block that out and think of, okay, here's the spot. I can see my arrow. My arrow's going to hit the center of the X, going to center the X. And now you got to kind of block all that out, which somebody put this bad thought in your head and it's hard to get it out.
Yeah, and you can only like you can say that to your buddies and stuff, but people really frown upon it when tell them, "Hey, don't miss this one out on a 3D course." But
More times than not, they're going to miss.
yeah, or even if they know how far it is, they'll make a poor shot, and it's so even like shooting at home in the backyard with my dad or any of my buddies, or even at the local range where I know some people are gonna give me a little crap about shooting. When they say that, man, it like you said, that stays in your mind. The challenge of now to completely block that out. I don't know if some people just don't know how to do that.
Yeah, that's a skill that's not taught anywhere unless you're going for something that's specifically teaching that type of a mental training, because nothing you get in any school classes are going to help you with that, because that's something that you have to um, work with somebody that knows how to change those thoughts and control those thoughts, and kind of like the old biofeedback things that that you see once in a while, where you get this feedback on what you're doing, you get feedback on what you're doing. um some I've never done it, but I've seen times where they hook you up to the monitors and you can kind of control stuff, and there's a lot of stuff that you can control yourself, but it takes practice. You got to constantly practice it, try and do all that. And uh, most of us, I don't think, have the patience to work with that, or even know what to do or how to do it.
Yeah, the well, pressure like that, people there's only so many ways to replicate pressure because shooting at a deer puts you in a pressure situation. Shooting at
Right.
a target for money puts you in a pressure situation. And I think that that is one good thing about 3D archery or any kind of competitive archery would be that little bit of pressure that it gives you. I think it allows for you to mentally be able to deal with shooting at a live animal a little better.
Yeah.
And that's another thing that people don't like, the pressure of competitiveness, trying to win. And some of those people that I know that have made that statement to me, I know they've wounded a lot more animals than I have. And they're like, well, we don't like to compete. Well, I I try to explain to them that, well, the competitiveness, even if it's just some simple competition between you and your friends, that allows for that don't miss kind of thing to you. It's easier for it to creep in your head if you never have someone there telling you, hey, don't miss, or
Right.
hey, I bet you $5 you won't hit that. Or so I think any kind of competitiveness like that, or even just one of your buddies saying don't miss, I think people do need that.
It helps you figure out how to deal with it, how to block it out. And like that, instead of I bet $5 you can't miss, the better bet would be, I bet you $5 I can get closer to center than you.
Yeah,
So that changes the thing. So you're focusing on being closer to center, not missing.
yeah,
And that actually puts both of them at a competition in focus, instead of just making one do it.
yeah. I never thought about it quite like how you just said. Instead of telling someone, hey, I bet you $5 that you won't miss, or something like that, or just changing it to, hey, I bet you $5 that I'll be closer to you. I've never actually thought about how the mental side of that would transpire. Because that definitely changes your concentration for sure.
Well, both of it puts that missing, don't miss in your both of your heads. Because when you
Yeah,
say it, it puts in your head as well as their head. So by going the different direction, your head and their head is focused on getting it in the center, closer to the center. Not missing's not even an option, because you're only focused on going in the center.
yeah,
You have to try that sometime.
yeah. I'll next time me and my dad are shooting, I'll do a little experiment. Hopefully he
Yeah.
doesn't hear this first.
Yeah. Yeah, experiment. It's like, okay, I'll bet you $5 you miss, and then you know, you might be out $5, or you might hit it anyway. Yeah,
Yeah,
but then other things, I bet you $5 I can get closer, and then see what the difference intensity of both of your shooting is. Because if that, I bet you $5 you can't miss, well, you can be anywhere. Not miss is just in the target, but I'm closer makes you take, okay, the X that's in the center of the target, that's your target, not the whole target. It's going to force both of you to concentrate more,
Yeah. And
like a shoot off,
yeah,
a one arrow shoot off.
when I try it, I'll make sure neither one of us have even shot yet. First
Yeah,
arrow right out of the gate.
first arrow. Well,
Because
when
that's
you're out hunting, your first arrow counts.
yeah. Well, sometimes it's your fourth arrow.
Well, yeah. But the first one's the one that really counts. That's the
Yeah.
one you want to hit. You don't
Yeah.
normally get multiple shots at a deer or an elk.
No, no, you don't. And I've missed a couple now that got to watch them walk off, and I've
Well, it's
missed
your first
shooting.
arrow. You just have to shoot it twice.
Yeah. I've missed it in shoot offs. The first shoot off I never really think of making. It was a shoot off for $1,000. And I started doing really good, and I read my notes wrong and
Oh
ended up
no.
missing the next target. Because we got to go up and judge there was 5 targets, got to judge them all first and write them all down, and then that way it just made the shoot off go faster. And like it was the 4th target. I just read the wrong yardage and misset my sight per se and shot underneath it. And then the very next target I hit a 12, but
And
yeah,
a lot of 12s will make up for a miss.
well, I only had 2 targets left, so it was over at that point.
Yeah.
And I remember that kind of sick feeling of, man, that just happened.
Yeah.
And
But you
I'm not
blocked it
saying,
out and did good for the next shot.
yeah. And I've been in a couple other shoot offs, and I've only won a couple of shoot offs that I've been in, and none of them have been for big money or anything like that. One of the shoot offs I was in, I beat my dad 14. They had 14s in play, and my dad was up on me. And I did a little math, and I remember I had to shoot first, and I remember telling my dad, I'm like, man, if I hit a 14, I'll be 2 points up on you, and you'll have to hit a 10, or you'll have to hit at least a 12 to tie. And someone else ended up shooting one of the 14s, or I shot first, hit the 14. I think my dad shot second, and he hit the 12 he was shooting at, and another guy hit a 14. And they ended up giving me the win because I got more. They counted the 14 as a bonus ring, and I ended up beating my dad by a couple of bonus rings.
Oh.
And it was like $50 I ended up winning. He ended up in third.
You remember the shoot, not as much the money's here and gone. You remember that, the feeling of winning and shooting good, and
Yeah.
not that the money's bad, but it just, the money comes and goes, but it's the memories of the event that stay a long time.
Yeah. Yeah, that win right up there is one of my favorites, just because that was like one of the first times I can actually legitimately say, I beat you, Dad. Me against you on an actual course. I won.
Yeah.
And there's been other times I've beat him and stuff before that, but never quite like that one. And now we don't shoot against each other very often.
Yeah, you're in a little bit different divisions, so.
Yeah, at some of the local stuff, we shoot against each other, and he probably would have beat me last weekend. It was a team. We both were shooting in a team event that was random partners, and but in terms of just shooting wise, I think he probably shot better than I did last weekend. He still amazes me with his yardage judging. He can judge yardage. I can say he judges yardage better than me.
That helps you make those shots a little better if you got the yardage down.
Yeah. But his process of finding yardage is different than mine. I've tried to do it his way and doesn't work for me.
Well, you got to find your own way of doing it.
Yeah, and that's something I've learned in archery, man. I had to really stop worrying about how my dad does it or how someone else is doing it and go about my own processes. And I was much more successful as an archer doing that.
Yeah, if you're struggling with something, that's when it's time to look at how others are doing it. But if you're trying how others are doing, it's not working, you got to find something that works for you. And, whether it's judging yardage or your draw process or anything, the way you shoot, all that's all individual. And, as a coach, that's what we learn. I teach one specific way of doing it, which works good for me. And then we look at what are you struggling with? How do we have to change it to work with you? It's not like the way I teach is the only way to do it. We're going to start there, and I'm going to tell you why we're doing it, and then we're going to adjust based on each person. And that's what you've got to do is, be open to change when you need to change. And
Well, and there's that
if
you said why we're doing it this way. That playing baseball, I had a coach that says always ask why. Doesn't matter in life what it pertains to. Always ask why. That way, someone's not just feeding you a load of bull crap.
right,
And when someone actually explains why and can explain it well, that's what I look for when I ask people advice or anything like that. And because there's a lot of advice people out here or in general can give you for archery, but not all of it's good.
yeah. I was I used to go in some of the other groups while I was starting mine up and looking at inviting them to my group, but groups that allow you to post stuff like that. And I'd see people post um it's like a video of them shooting. Well, it's like, um, how's my form look? And they got responses back. Well, just shoot more. No, wrong
Yeah.
answer. If you're doing it wrong, you're gonna get better at doing it wrong. If it's not working for you, get something that's going to change. So then I'd invite them, into the Archtalk 101 Facebook group, because we're going to upload a video. We're going to give you critiques on what you need to do to fix it, because I like doing it with videos, because I can play them back and I can slow motion them. And, I got a video editor program that I can go frame at a time. I can see exactly what's going if I want to slow it down that much. And that just makes it so much easier to review if you can see something. When I first started teaching, uh, you had a VCR was your only option because phones didn't have cameras in them at that time. This is in the 90s and early
Yeah.
2000s. So you have to watch them shoot. You got to watch one thing. And if you're watching their finger, you got to shoot and watch what they're doing on their finger. You can't watch anything else. So you got to watch what their hands doing. Where the video, I can play back, I can watch something different each time. So that's what's nice about, now is you can show them and then you can tell them, okay, this is what you need to change and this is why you need to change it. And I've always done the why. It just makes so much more sense. And when I've taught people how to do it and give them the why, they actually pick it up because I said so is not an answer.
Yeah, it's a really bad answer anyway.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
a lot of whenever I give people advice, and I started limiting some of the advice that I give because a lot of people don't listen to it.
Right.
They try it for a second, and they go, "Well, that didn't feel right to me," and then they go back to their struggling of how they were doing it. Well, it's like, well, it didn't feel right because you were doing it wrong for so long,
Right.
and
Yeah, I know that when I first learned, back tension release, when I went down to the class to learn it and then ultimately become an instructor as well. My bow was 32-inch draw length. That's what it was set for. So I go down. First thing is check your draw length because improper draw length, you're not ever going to shoot right, especially back tension was too long. I was 29 and a half. my bow was 32, and it's not now where, now a lot of you can change that draw length really easy. No, I had to go and finally get it down to 29 and a half, because it was a Friday, Saturday, and Sunday night class. And so Saturday I'm running trying to got my bow down there, and it felt short and everything else, and going through and learning another technique, and now I shoot 29. I shorten up an extra half inch because that puts enough bend in my arm that big winter coats, I don't
Yeah.
hit my coat.
Yeah, I remember like the measuring your wingspan and dividing it by 2.5. Mine comes out to like 28 and 3/4, but that's way too short for me. I
Yeah.
shoot like 30.5. I have my hunting bow set at 30 because it whacks my arm really bad at 30.5, but still whacks my arm at 30. I mean, I've even shortened it to 29.5 and it still does it. That's why
Oh,
my hunting bow, I don't know if it's just how I gripped the bow or because it's the only bow that I've set like that where it's done that. The only time I can ever think of where I was ever whacking my arm was with my dad's bow when I was a lot younger. A couple of
yeah.
times I tried it, and his draw length is like 31.5. Excuse me. But tell my dad all the time, no, I don't want to try and shoot your bow. It's gonna whack me.
Yeah. I know when I first when I was down at PSE down through dealer school, they give a formula for it. There's a number you take off, and then every inch longer a draw length is, or arms wingspan is another half inch of draw length. So I just draw it out and do the thing. But you know, I can't remember what that formula was, but the 2.5 is close. Um,
Yeah, for most people, it it definitely didn't work for me because for years I shot my bow at 29, 28.5, and I'm not saying I was inaccurate, but I would have I would have a weird push up with it from time to time. I'd have some weird flyers, and I don't remember which podcast it was, but someone told me or listening to it, they said just experiment with some longer draw lengths, see what how it feels better, see if you have more pin movement or less pin movement. And I kept adding, I'd add a half inch at the time on my bow, and eventually I ended up at 30.5. And man, it felt great. I became almost instantly, I was more accurate. The pin didn't move nearly as much, and I've stuck with it ever since. And then I try to, every new bow I get, I adjust a little farther out, a little farther in until I find my happy medium. But that that was big for me. My draw length changing definitely changed my accuracy as an archer.
oh yeah, that's one of the things that can control it. The other problem you can run into, um, with too short of a draw length that pushes that shoulder up. There's all kinds of different things that you can adjust on the body and the way you do it. But draw length is going to be determined by what we set up for your form, and depending on how your body works. You said you had a shoulder injury. Well, that might change something where you can't do something a little different, even though you probably not have any effects of it now, but can't play baseball. But everything on your body, the way it works is going to be changed. And that's where, as a coach, we go through and we look at everything. It's like, okay, what can we change? What can we change, to make it better for you? Now, a brand new archer, less times you can't really do much because they're still haven't figured out a form. We're still working on getting that form. That's why every time I sold a bow, I was, set them up and taught them how to shoot. It's my theory was if you know how to shoot, you're going to keep staying archery. You stay in archery, you can keep buying more stuff from me.
Yeah, yeah,
Well, and besides, I want you to stay in archery, because the more archers we have, the better. But that way you'd come to me to get stuff, and you know, I I never really pushed something because it was high dollar. I pushed it because it worked better. Like
yeah,
stabilizers. go through, put on that just hunk of aluminum stabilizer, and then go next higher up and higher up and higher up, and ask the archers, like, can you tell the difference between this one and that one? No, we'll go with the cheap one then. Yeah, that was my thing. If you can't tell the difference, why spend the extra money?
Yeah.
And later when you get better, you're going to say, oh man, this is better because your form is better. You got rid of your death grip and you can feel what the bow is doing, and you're going to upgrade a little bit here, a little bit there. And my thought was get you into archery as cheap as you can with still good equipment. And of course, nowadays, pretty much any bow manufacturer's got, quality bows. It's just what fits you best and what you like.
Yeah. Well, I think a lot of problems a lot of archers have is being too brand specific. They get stuck on using a specific brand because a hunt or a TV personality or their buddies shoot this brand of bow or release or arrows, and a lot of people they're not willing to try something else.
Right.
Levi Morgan said Matthews bows are the best, so there's no way it can't work for me. I Things like that. I mean, a lot of stuff like that bugs me. It's like, man, I understand your archery shop's not going to have every bow, but all the bows that he
Right.
has in there, try them all.
Right.
When you get a chance, try someone else's. If they let you, try someone else's bow. Because that's how I ended up shooting Bowtech. I bought an elite bow because my dad had one.
Right.
And and I really like an elite bow. I own one now. The guys at Elite are top notch. And I had bought an elite bow that didn't work for me at the time. And I already knew that I was at that point learning to not be so brand specific and try some other things. And I sold that elite bow, and Josh Trollinger, like I said, he had been on your podcast before. He
Yeah.
sold me a Bowtech Reckoning, the first version of the Reckoning, and man, that bow was just so much nicer, and there were so many things about it that I liked, and it just fit me so much better, and became a better archer right away. And now I think about it, Josh sold me like 3 or 4 bows in a row after that. He sold me my
Oh,
next hunting bow, my next target bow. Probably even bought another one from him in between there. I actually sold that first bow back to him. He
oh
bought it
yeah.
back from me. He has something sentimental about it. I think he killed a really big buck with it or something like that.
And he was regretting it. He's selling it because the
Yeah.
sentimental value.
Yeah. And Josh was he actually talked me into using a Bowtech, and I tried it and I liked it. I still like my Bowtech. I mean, in terms of their hunting bows, I don't have a Bowtech hunting bow right now, but I have an Elite, and I wish I would have maybe went another direction. I would have bought something that fit me better.
Yeah. That's kind of a lesson to learn is, when you're going out, we talk about this quite a bit on the show. When you're starting out, go to the shop, have them determine whether you're right or left eye dominant. And then if you have a physical reason to not shoot dominant eye, then you do that. But if you're left-handed, go try every left-handed bow they have. If it's, if your budget's in $500 range, for the whole bow, and they got a $900 just plain bow, you may not want to even try it because you're going to like it and it's out of your budget. So look at everything in your budget, pick them up and hold them. If you don't like what feels in your hand, put it back. Once you find one you like, then have them set it up. Set it up to
Yeah,
the minimum weight. See, you're not there to see how much you can pull. You're there to try different bows. And then I always try to set up the bows the same draw length and same draw weight, because a bow shooting at 60 pounds versus one shooting the same bow at 70 is going to feel different.
yeah,
So set them up at that 60 pounds or 50 pounds or whatever you can crank them down to at the minimum, because you want to be able to shoot a lot. And if you crank up to higher weight, you can't shoot them. You get
Yeah,
tired because you're
it's
not used to it.
yeah, for sure.
And just try them and take two bows and whichever one you like the best. I've done this, many times. A guy, we had like 4 or 5 bows out there, and finally I says, okay, you're going to shoot these with your eyes because you're not going to know which one's which because there are multiple different brands. They're all set up same weight, same draw length. And so I'd hand him the bow and we'd put an arrow in it and shoot with your eyes closed. Then I'd grab the next bow and do the same thing. It's which one you like better, first one or second one. And they'd say, first one. I'd say, why? I didn't care what his answer was. I just wanted him to talk about it. So
Yeah,
then I'd take 2 more bows, like shoot those, which we like better, one or two, and then take, all of them that he's, pick, if you do 2 of them and then do 2 different ones and then go back to the 2 he liked, then okay, pick one and why. Okay, this is your bow. Now shoot with your eyes open and this is the bow that you like the best without having the mental aspect of, oh, well, I want this brand.
yeah. I I think being brand specific gets a lot of archers in trouble, and especially new archers, like you said, because buying something that doesn't fit you right or just isn't comfortable to shoot, you're not going to want to go play
Right.
anymore.
Or you're forking so much out of your pocket that it's a stretch, because
Yeah,
some of the new bows, they could be 1,000, 12, $1,500 for the bow with no accessories on it. And that's, I can't fathom spending $1,200 on a bow with nothing on it. you know, Now me at my level here, I would, but I
yeah.
don't plan on getting rid of my bows anytime soon. I've got 2 PSEs that one I got set up for hunting and one set up for other stuff. And uh, until I have to, I'm not going to change.
No, the hunting bow I had, I would now I wish I would have kept it. It fit me better. It was more comfortable to shoot. I was confident in it every shot, and say, the parts and pieces that go on the bow are more important that they work for you. Also, I mean, just
Right.
because having less pins and having a movable sight is, in my opinion, better than having a big giant block of pins where you can't see anything. But
It helps you focus on look through one pin at one target, not have multiple pins that you're seeing there in your close fish and your they're your pins aren't going to be as clear because you're focusing on your target, not on the pins. I
yeah,
was like, tell you, if you're focusing on the pin, you're not aiming because where that pin is at, because you're focused on the pin. You focus on the target, put the pin over the target. And if you have multiple ones, you can see where, that could cause a problem as well. Which one are you putting over it? Now, I shoot multiple pins, always have, uh, but
yeah. Well, I don't have anything against multiple pins. I, my personal opinion though, if I was like right now, I have a 5 pin sight on my hunting bow. I wish there was only. I might take 2 of the pins off. I can see so much more. I can't move this
right.
sight, but being able to see more of the target, I feel like is pretty important because it's easier to put the pin where it needs to be. Like I said, if you're focusing on the pin, you're not aiming. And then also another piece of equipment I feel like a lot of people go cheap with is a release.
Oh yeah, definitely.
And even shooting a wrist strap release. Hold on 1 second, sir. No
Yeah,
else.
the releases are a big thing because that's your trigger.
Yeah,
And when you have a trigger that moves a lot and you're pulling that trigger, which you're not supposed to be pulling trigger anyway, but even shooting back tension, if that you feel that trigger moving, and now what do you think about? Now you're focused on that trigger moving, and what did you stop doing? Stop aiming. So once you start aiming, what are you going to hit? You don't know because you're not aiming anything. You're just pointing it in the general direction. and we're not pointing and shooting.
Yeah. And then, because like I've tried, I I was shooting a back tension at the time. I had won a thumb button release in a raffle, or someone gave it to me or something, and I figured I'd just try it. I missed the target completely because, man, it just didn't work really. I mean, I guess for someone that had a lower poundage bow, it would have worked better. But I remember when I was starting to squeeze the trigger mechanism on it, it wasn't smooth. It had a ton of travel in it, but I remember it made me freaking have a really bad herky jerky shot, and I ended up
Right.
missing the target. And I'm like, right away, I'm like, yeah, that release isn't for me. And I ended up letting someone else try it, and they they didn't like it either. And I don't remember what happened to that release. Probably sold it to somebody, and they
Yeah.
probably didn't like it. But but yeah, and then that was one of the first times I'd ever tried a thumb button, because I went from using a regular wrist strap release to a hinge.
Oh, yeah.
I didn't try the button. I don't I don't know why, but I remember shooting with a bunch of the local guys that at the time were a lot better shots than me, and all of them used a hinge. And they explained the process behind using the hinge. And I'm like, all right, I'll try it. And the first one I bought, it was an epic failure. I just bought a release that didn't work for me properly. But
Yeah.
the second go around, I went and tried one and found one that fit my hand, and it was a True Fire Sear. I shot really well with that release. I would shoot well with it now. It would feel like second nature using one. I'd have once I set it up to me, but then I remember trying that thumb button the first time, and that was really weird. I'm like, man, if that's what every thumb button's gonna be like, I'm not shooting one of those ever. And I
Yeah. That's
I
where you got
still
to
don't.
get a good one.
I have a good thumb button now, but I still don't shoot it.
Yeah, you're used to the other ones, and on 3Ds and stuff like that, you've got the time. It's not like you have to, move a lot more movement when you're doing a deer, and the hinges are might be a little more difficult to hunt with.
I still hunt with the hinge. Um, I don't know why.
But you're used to it.
Yeah, I feel like I know I could shoot a thumb button or a trigger, any kind of a trigger related release. But I don't know that my hinge, man, that's my go-to. I can't get away from that. My accuracy's better with it. I feel like that's the most important thing when it comes to hunting is arrow
Right.
placement. So in my mind, I feel like whatever I can do to be the most accurate. Like this year, I'm trying something a little different. I have a longer stabilizer on my hunting bow than I've ever ran. I have a 24-inch bar on it and a little bit of weight. And I mean, I'm definitely steadier with that than compared to the
Right.
12-inch bar I normally would use. All of my tree stands allow me to do it. I'm probably not going to hunt out of a blind this year, but if I do, I'll put a shorter bar on. It's not going to affect me that much. I mean, but there's a fly walking on my camera. But
Yeah, it was on there a little bit earlier. It's like just moving around over the camera, over the lens.
yeah, but no, I truly do feel as people should do as much as they can to be most accurate if they're going to go hunting. Because I think a stabilizer, the little 8-inch piece of rubber limb saver stabilizer that archery shops sell to people. I mean, I don't necessarily agree with that. It's not doing anything. It's not stabilizing your shot. It's just a weight.
Yeah. Now, if you're just looking at weight, that's one thing. If you want heavier, but that's where nice thing now with the cameras, you can video the shot going off and see how each stabilizer is affecting the bow, as well as how you feel when you're shooting it, and that's some of the things that it's really nice now that it's advanced where, when I started there was none of this advanced fancy stuff. Um, they heck, when my first compound bow, they didn't have carbon arrows yet. So
Yeah.
we're shooting aluminum. And, you talked about snapping arrows. It's like, well, I was at an indoor shoot and it's like, I just grab an arrow and shoot, you're shooting every once in a while. It's like, I'm just throwing one out, getting a five or way out there. And it's like, and I hadn't been spinning it, testing them. So I come back and spin, oh, that one's bent. No wonder, so got to take it out of your thing. And, once they're bent, I've got two jigs that straighten arrows. I've never had one that you straightened that was any better than where it was when it's still bent. You can
Yeah.
straighten them out, get them there, but by the time they've bent, they're already weakened and the spine is weakened on them, and it's just time to get new ones. But I can see on something like that, really bending it so you don't ever shoot it again. But I'm gonna pull the nocks out and pull the tips out and keep them. I may even
Yeah.
pull the insert out.
Can you my phone fell for a second.
Yeah, I seen all of a sudden looking at the roof, the ceiling.
But yeah, one of the tests that someone told me when it comes to figuring out a stabilizer is get a circle that you feel as if you can hold your pin in at 20 yards. See if you can keep your pin inside the smallest circle you can, whether it be on a Vegas face or just a dot, and go change. If you change your stabilizer weight, see if it holds better. See if it gets more erratic, holding for a longer time. And same with stabilizer length. I mean, if I understand that not everybody's tree stand they can shoot a 24-inch bar out of,
Right.
and that's one of the reasons why I'm doing it. It's because I have my tree stands allow me to do that. But using a 10-inch bar compared to a 14-inch bar, I think you would gain quite a bit in those 4 inches with a little bit of weight out front away from the bow than you would just shooting a 10-inch bar with little to no weight on it.
Yeah. And if you don't have enough, like on the bow, will have a tendency to kick up instead of down.
Yeah.
And I was watching my one bow that I use for target, and I don't really use it too much anyway. Mostly the hunting bow. Um, but I know it's just had a little bitty short stabilizer on it. Maybe 3 inches long. And I noticed when I was videoing, I was doing some videos, and it was kicking up, which meant it needed more weight to go forward. But I very seldom ever shoot that bow. That's the one I use for 3Ds and stuff, and I haven't been able to go to one for a while, and I don't really shoot spot targets anymore. So at tournaments, anyway, just in the backyard. I got a target in the backyard, so I can go shoot anytime I can finally pull one back now.
I do not have a target in my backyard at the moment. And I keep wondering, asking myself why I don't, but I live in town and there's only one good spot I can put a target, and I think I can only get 18 yards.
Oh yeah. Well, if you can get something just close, you're working on technique
Yeah.
and form, and that's times that's where you get you stand 3 feet away from it. And so as you draw back, you can shoot your eyes closed and just feel how the shot feels and go through that to practice that part.
Yeah. Well, fortunately, my dad lives a whole whopping 2 minutes from me, and our
Oh,
shop is here at his house. And I come inside to do that kind of stuff. But I mean, I really like shooting indoor archery. I do enjoy it, but I don't have a place to practice it. I don't have a 20-yard lane that I can go to every night and shoot 200 arrows. None of my friends have the space for me that will accommodate that, and me or my dad don't have that. So unfortunately I don't get to practice indoor archery as much as I'd like.
well, you have to tell your dad. You guys are in construction, so build one.
Yeah. Yeah, if only it was that easy.
Yeah, build one.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's simple. Just build one.
I was thinking to myself, maybe this year I'd build a little shooting shed to put in my yard so I can heat it this winter
Oh yeah.
and get some shots off. But I'll have to build some kind of a backstop too, because it's shooting in town. I mean, you do miss every once in a while, even at
Yeah,
20.
yeah. There for a while. I don't know if they've changed it. In Omaha, it used to be you could shoot in your yard as long as the arrow didn't leave your property. Well, how do you know? All of a sudden something breaks, you send that arrow up at an angle, and who knows where it goes. So,
Yeah,
even though you technically can, it's not really safe. Um, where I'm at, I've got a garage that I shoot at, but I don't shoot out there too often because we are kind of in town, but there's some places I could go and set up a target, but I have a nice 4 foot square target to shoot into.
yeah. The town I live in, there actually isn't even a law about shooting a gun in this town.
Oh yeah, we hear gunshots every once in a while around here because it's we're out in the middle of nowhere. It's a little village, 168 people.
Yeah. Yeah, the town Lincoln me and my dad live in, Lincoln, Kansas. I think in the town is only like 800 people and in the entire county, which there's another small town 15 minutes from here. I think the entire county only has like 2,500 people in it or something like that. It's not very many. But yeah, we called the sheriff one time to ask if we could shoot a possum with a 22 or something. And he said, yeah, there's no laws about it. My dogs are.
Oh, he made a little view when your dad was on.
Yeah. I brought my dogs over to his house today. Alice, my German Shepherd, she's a really good dog, super smart. And then I got a dachshund that he's a little more rambunctious. He doesn't like to just hang out.
Oh, yeah, yeah. Your dad's dog was in part of the videos a little bit, but not quite as much as this one. He just stuck his head up and pet it.
No, this is my big baby. Uh she's from Nebraska originally.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, she's 9 months old now. I or 10 months old now. I got her in January. I got her as a birthday gift to myself from a friend that I met through archery, and he had posted on Facebook, I got German Shepherd puppies for sale, and I didn't really know I wanted a German Shepherd puppy, and I molded over and I texted him like, all right, I'll take one as long as I can get a female. And I ended up getting Alice, and she's been a great dog. I'm super happy I got her.
Yeah. Yeah, they can be a lot of fun.
But yeah, that's another thing about archery is just the connections that I've made with people through the years. Yeah, it's uh between getting a dog, going a couple years ago, went ice fishing with some people we had met through archery. We've gone on hunting trips with other people, and it's the world of archery can bring you all sorts of places, no matter
Oh
what
yeah.
facet of it you're in.
Yeah, no matter what you're doing, there's somebody around there's a shoot somewhere you can go to, and depends on how far you want to drive.
Yeah. Or there'll be someone that will just come and shoot in the backyard with you too. I mean,
Yeah.
and then I found myself going on multiple out of state archery hunting trips with friends, and I've gone back to Colorado elk hunting. I've gone down to Arkansas bear hunting. I was unsuccessful bear hunting in Arkansas, but
Oh yeah.
I had my opportunity, but it was a little too dark. I couldn't see through my peep sight.
Oh yeah. Yeah, if you can't see through your peep sight, it's kind of hard to shoot.
Yeah, and it was black bear is that I was attempting to shoot. I got it full draw, and I remember looking through, and it was at It was at 30 yards or so. I couldn't see it. I couldn't tell what I was looking at, so I had to let down. And when I let down, it took off running.
Yeah. Well, if you can't see your target, you don't know where you're aiming.
Yeah, I couldn't even tell if I was on the bear or if I was on the ground or not. It would have been a very ill-advised shot, even if I could have
Right.
seen it.
Yeah, it's like you might as well just close your eyes and hope.
Yeah,
Because that's basically what you had. You just like, yeah, okay, can't see anything.
and then that was the only bear I saw. That
Oh,
was the first one, first hunt. I saw a bear, and then after that, I did a lot of sitting in the tree stand and hoping.
yeah. Well, that's why I call it hunting, not shooting, right? If
Yeah,
you want to guarantee meat, you go to the store and buy it.
yeah. And last
If you
year,
want the
I ended
good
up
meat, you go
buying.
shoot it.
Yeah, I had to buy a lot of meat last year. Unfortunately, I was not successful deer hunting.
Yeah, kind of gets that way.
Yeah.
Well, we've been on for a couple hours here, so probably let you get back to spending your Saturday doing whatever you do on Saturdays, shooting or spending it with your dad or whoever. And it's been really great talking with you. Uh, you have any parting thoughts you want to leave?
Um. Well, yeah, like I said, if even if you've been shooting for a long time, try some new bows, try some other things. I mean, like I said, seeing people that are so brand specific just because someone else uses something, that's not always the best way to go. Experimentation will probably make you a better archer. Don't
Yeah,
be scared to try new products, try new methods of hunting, have fun with it. Also, I'd say try and get your friends in archery. More people that come out and shoot, the more fun it is.
yeah.
Support your local archery clubs, your local archery shops. That would be what I would got.
It good advice. Just get out there and I've seen and talked to many archers that they were kind of drug into their first time shooting, and next thing you know, they're doing more than the person that drug them into it. And it's just
Yeah,
try it and see. There's a lot of events out there that help with that. I know Nebraska has um, several events, introducing women to the outdoors, and part of it is archery and other things. Just get out there and if you know somebody that's not an archer, take them to shop and let them shoot one. I
yeah,
talked to, I had one lady come in multiple times, different people, but as who they was with was shooting, and asked, "Do you want to shoot?" And it's like, "No, nah, we'll set one. Just shoot one arrow." Shot one arrow. Turn around and says, "Can I do it again?" Get,
yeah,
realize how much fun it can be. When that arrow goes off, and even no matter how close you get to the target, but it's just the amazement of that bow going off, and the power you feel out of it when it goes off is just really cool to a new archer. And those are the fun ones that when you get somebody introduced into it, and they just see how exciting it can be, and how it's like, now why we do it.
yeah. And it it doesn't matter what form of archery. I mean, it's all fun. It's like I said, even if you're just into hunting, like, go ahead and shoot with some of your friends in the backyard and stuff. And I have just as much fun doing that as I do going to most of the 3D
Right,
shoots.
right. And
It's
it's just you can take it anywhere. You've got the longbows, the recurves, the compounds, the crossbows, and then you have all um
there's
you know
bow
you
fishing. There's
yeah, bow fishing, there's hunting, there's just shooting targets, there's your Olympic style shooting, your field archery, your 3D archery, just like targets, indoor target shoots. There's just so many options to do that. And You don't even have to like hunting.
Yeah,
You know, that you could be, where you don't really like hunting. That don't mean you can't shoot a bow.
yeah.
I get
There's
this what, say something about archers. Well, I don't hunt. I didn't ask that. It's archery.
yeah.
You don't have to hunt with a bow.
I've met a good handful of archers at big events or small events that they never go hunting. They just enjoy shooting their bow. It's
Yeah,
something to do, which a lot of people lack hobbies in general. So I guess the other piece of advice to anybody is find a hobby.
right. And not the video archery games.
Yeah,
Don't do those. Get a real bow.
yeah, yeah.
Get a
Get a
real
real
bow.
bow, try it. You'll enjoy it.
Yeah. And you can start 3-year-olds out with archery.
Yeah, I have some friends that they have some really young kids and they're shooting bows and their kids are really into it. They love
All
it.
my kids started out about three on a 5-pound compound. 5 pounds is all it was. It was a compound bow, and I had two of them, and of course, they're really cheap, and they eventually just wore out. When you go through 3 kids shooting the two bows, and now they all have a little bit nicer bows. You know,
Yeah,
Pro Series bows from PSE.
yeah. It's my first. I had a Bear Brave was my first bow, but then I guess my next couple of compounds were PSEs after that. And I remember my dad getting me a real bow when I was a kid, and it had a peep sight and a sight. And I remember asking him for a drop away rest, and because he had just got one on his bow, and I thought that was really cool. I'm like, I want that, Dad.
Yeah,
And he ended up getting me one, and but yeah, it's and then I have kids, or I don't have any kids, but I have friends that have kids that were much younger than me that have bows, and they're relatively good shots. They're if they stick with it, who knows where they could go with it.
yeah, yeah. It's something you can do from um, from about 3 years old to pretty much until,
Can't pull a
well,
bow
you
back anymore.
yeah, when you can't pull a bow back anymore, or even after that, you can build strength back. Like me, I can't
Yeah,
pull right now, but I'm going to be back to pulling bows. But um, there's no really age limit, there's no restriction either. No physical ability that we can't figure out a way to go around it.
yeah. Now they have mouth tabs and stuff that people are
Yep.
have no arms or shoot the Paralympics guy that won gold medal, armless archer.
Yeah, Matt Stutzman.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that was cool
I,
to see. It's like,
I've
man,
met him a couple of times. We keep missing getting him on the podcast. My goal is to get him on the podcast here pretty soon. I gotta call him up and say, Matt, we need to schedule a time. We've been trying to do this for 2 years.
yeah, he's that was incredible to watch. That was really interesting. I had known about mouth tabs and seen a couple of TV personalities say, "Yeah, I'm shooting a mouth tab on the TV," but I never actually watched anyone see how accurate it is. And it's like, man, that's
Oh
way
yeah.
different than I actually thought it was.
Well, Matt shows up at the Nebraska has the Missouri Valley Outdoor Expo up at Ponca State Park, coming up the 20th, 21st, and 22nd of this month of September. And the last couple of years, Matt's been there. I imagine he's going to be there again. And last year, I was volunteering at what they call aerial archery, which is a big foam disc that they shoot, and you shoot at them with, yeah,
Yep,
with like tennis
blue
balls or
flu
something on the
arrows
end
and
of them.
stuff.
Yeah, now regular arrows, but the big old tennis ball or something on it. So you're not sticking it; you just bounce off of them. And this lady come through and was talking to her, and she didn't have a hand from the wrist out was gone. There was no hand at all in the left hand. And so Chris, she went up to the 3D part of it, and they rigged up an arm guard on her hand and around the bow so she could hold bow with the arm guard, and they had her shooting a bow, holding a bow in her left hand with no hand or left arm.
Yeah.
And then they got it hooked up with some people that have other, stuff that can make it a little better. And now she has a device, a couple devices in her toolbox she carries with her, just for that case, when somebody has something like that, where they can, get shoot a bow. And of course, Matt's, born without any arms. He's shooting a bow.
Yeah. I I met a lady that she was at a local shoot. She was missing a hand. I believe it was her right hand, and they hooked a back tension release onto it, onto her prosthetic hand thing, or she had a hook, but she is able to operate the release with no hand.
Yeah, yeah.
I
Well, the
mean,
first time I seen somebody that was like that, I was at a 3D event here in Nebraska, not too far from where I'm at now, and I seen this guy walking around with no left arm. From the shoulder was gone, though, like from the shoulder socket itself was all
yeah,
gone. And then later I seen another guy walk around with the right one gone. And then I noticed on their string was a big piece of tape or something. So what I'm assuming they did is they bit onto it and drew. Now this has been probably 30 years ago or more, before they had some of the other stuff. But back then they was able to do it. One-armed archer. I had seen two of them. One was right-handed, one was left-handed.
yeah. It's shows you that anyone can do it.
Yeah, anyone can, and you just need to get with somebody that's willing to work with you. Just like I had one time, a guy calls me up and says, "Hey, can you set my bow up to shoot two arrows same time?" He'd called the other shops in town and says, "No." They just flat said no. I was like, okay, show up after I close, because you can't afford me during the day. And besides, I'm busy. So he showed up and we played around a whole bunch of stuff. Now, it wasn't a center shot design riser, which the rest we have now, all the bows now pretty much are a center shot design riser, which is a
Yeah.
PSC patent. I had to throw that in. But we use stick-on rests on there, and we was playing around, and he's using a release, and we did a whole bunch of stuff to work out, what worked, and we got it set up to shoot two arrows. Now they're going to shoot way slower because you got double the weight of arrow,
Yeah.
but he didn't care. He was then I found he was a motivational speaker, and he wanted to get the kids' attention by shooting two arrows and popping two balloons or something or other. And so that's what he wanted to do, was that was his attention getter, is shooting two arrows. And I've seen other videos of others doing it. It's just nobody was willing to even look at it. And I was like, this could be fun. And then there we tried, we was using a release and, putting a loop above the top one in the middle and below. And it just found uh, the knot goes above the top one and below the bottom one. That's how we got our most consistent grouping. And by the time we got done, the space between the arrows never varied more than an eighth of an inch
Hmm.
by the time we got done. Now, where he hit was all depending on where he was aiming, where he was shot was. But we'd measure the distance, and it got to where it was consistently no less than an eighth, no more than an eighth of an inch difference. And we learned a lot on how to set up a bow, by doing that, because not only you have one arrow, but you got two arrows, and now that changes the center and changes everything changed on it. Because we weren't shooting one off the shelf, and we tried, the fletching alignments differently and all kinds of stuff. And it just, you learn quite a bit about that. And that's why, when I put a loop on a bow, I don't put knots on there. The top knot of the loop goes above the arrow, and the bottom one goes below it, and they're right up there next to it. There's no knock pinch, because there's no slop in there. It's not pinching, it's pulling each side of it. And that's your most efficient flight of your arrow. It's putting all the force directly behind the knock. So now your force goes from the knock to the tip, and that's your most efficient way to send an arrow. And I always tell people, it's like, well, take a pencil and put it on the table, and push from the knot, or from the racer to the tip. It goes straight. Now turn your finger just slightly, just a little bit off. Now push. It doesn't go straight. Next thing you know, that pencil turns. And that's what you're doing to an arrow if you don't push the force directly through the shaft, from the knock to the tip.
Yeah,
Little,
makes sense.
little bit of lessons that I've learned. I try to put some kind of lesson in each podcast, especially for those that listen to the whole thing. They get a lesson. I should probably tell them I got a trick for you at the end, but I don't. But yeah, anybody that's interested in getting any help or anything, just let us know. I'm willing to help you all whatever I can, and I'm sure Jason, if you send him a message, he'd be glad to help you as well. Kind of volunteering you. Hope that's okay.
Yep. Oh
Um,
yeah, I have no problem helping.
uh,
It's
and if you want to join the Arch Talk 101 Facebook group, there we have about, I think, 1,500 plus people in that group, archers from all over the world. And I do mean all over the world. Um, there's some from countries that I have to Google map it to figure out where they're at. Uh,
yeah,
so all over. And we have archery instructors have been teaching, myself, I've been an archery instructor since 95. We have archers have been shooting 50, 60 years. We have instructors that are just new being instructors. We have archers from just starting out or not even really getting their first bow to those that have, shooting at semi-pro, pro, and Olympic archers. We've had them all. You know, I've talked to a lot of them on the podcast. And if you know anybody that likes to talk archery, wants to get on the podcast, let me know. Um, the only requirement is we start talking about archery, and as we know, we get into other subjects as well. I just like to start with archery and go from there. And you can watch this video in the Arch Talk 101 Facebook group. You can also go to my YouTube channel, Learn to Fix It Yourself. I have all kinds of videos out there. I've got over 900 videos out there now of all kinds of stuff. You can watch it there. You can listen to this on Spotify or wherever you listen to podcasts, as well as on audible.com. It's free to listen there. So that's another place you can listen to it. Listen to it while you're driving, especially when you have, you know, a long podcast. I listen to Audible books. So sometimes it takes me, 4 or 5 days of driving because I drive probably 45, 50 minutes every day when I go to work. So I got to have something. I'd much rather listen to a podcast than I would listen to music. Learn something as you're driving.
yeah, yeah. We listen to podcasts as much as we can. We listen to them at work. We listen to them while especially when we're driving to an event.
Oh yeah. And there's a lot of really good ones out there. So yeah, I'll leave some links to some of the stuff we talked about in here just to make it easier. I'll leave links like to the Bowtech or Elite and some of the other places we talked about, and of course I'll leave a link into the Facebook group as well, so that you can find that a little easier. I won't in the Facebook group because you're already in the group. You don't listen there, you got to be a member of the group. It's a private group, so.
Yep.
So if you're not a member, go ahead and join. If you have a question on something, take a video of what you're doing and post it up there and upload it from take a picture of your phone, have somebody video on your phone, and then just upload from your phone to the group and say, hey, what's your problem? And we can take a look at it. And if we need to, we'll give you some tips. And then if you want to have more concentrated or even a longer session or something, then we can arrange something, because I do some online coaching. I don't do a lot of it, but I do have ability to coach you online, so you don't have to be here, which works actually pretty good. My first online coach was in Italy. The first person I coached, he was in Italy.
That's interesting.
The
Which
second one was in Canada. Doesn't even live in the country. That's the first
yeah,
online ones, but I do some local stuff too once in a while. But anyway, I've been your host. My name is Rory Canterbury, and here on Arch Talk 101 podcast, I've enjoyed talking with Jason, and a couple times before we talked to your dad, and it was kind of interesting hearing all the different stories, and I like hearing them, and I'm sure our audience enjoyed them as well. If they didn't, they wouldn't be listening this long.
yeah. Next
So,
time, me and my dad will have to get on here at the same time. And
oh yeah, yeah. That'll be an interesting one.
Yeah, because people that see us together, we don't agree on everything.
Well, yeah, that's me and my sons don't always agree on everything either, but yeah, you kind of, yeah, they ask you questions and then you answer and then like, don't do this, don't do it. I just told you to do. It's like, "Mm, okay, that's just normal." You give the advice and the kids listen or don't listen. They're adults, they can do what they want.
I always tell my dad, "Don't worry, I'm always right."
Yeah. Yeah. That's a good thing. So yeah. Um, yeah, thanks for watching or listening if you're listening on the podcast. But it's been a lot of fun, and we'll see you on the next one.